I was halfway through my morning coffee when the text came in. We all agreed, "You're not welcome at Christmas." It was from my mother. No hello, no explanation, just that. The screen lit up against the soft gold morning light spilling through my apartment window. For a moment, I just stared at it, my thumb hovering above the reply icon, heart hammering harder than I wanted to admit. I placed the phone down beside my laptop and exhaled, slowly. The smell of freshly ground beans still lingered in the air, warm and bitter. A reminder that I'd learned to make peace with solitude. Outside, the city stretched beneath me, alive and noisy, but up here on the 23rd floor, everything was quiet.
Calm.
Controlled. Exactly how I liked it. I brushed a wrinkle from my silk blouse and adjusted my bracelet, white gold, engraved with a date only I understood. A small, silent milestone. It had been years since I'd spent Christmas with them. Years since I'd sat at that table pretending to laugh, while my mother found new ways to remind me that I didn't belong. Still, this message felt different, sharper, final. I smiled faintly. They had no idea what I'd done, what I'd paid, or what I was about to take back. Because this year, they'd finally see who I'd become, and what it cost to cut me off. I was 23 the last time I went home for Christmas. The house smelled like cinnamon and resentment, my mother's two favorite scents. I'd spent the past year working 2 jobs in Chicago, sending half my paycheck back to help them keep the lights on after Dad's medical bills drained everything. I thought it mattered. I thought I mattered. But that night, between the clinking glasses and fake smiles, I realized I didn't. "Emily," Mom said, her voice sweet and sharp like an icicle, "maybe if you focus less on yourself and more on family, you'd actually be useful." She said it in front of everyone, my brother Mark, his wife Jenna, even Grandma, who just stared down at her untouched pie. My hands went cold, gripping my water glass so tight I thought it might crack. "I sent you money last week," I said quietly. "For Dad's therapy." Mom laughed, a dry, cutting sound. "Oh, honey, that barely covered groceries. Maybe keep your charity to yourself." The words hit harder than I expected. All my sacrifices, the long nights, the skipped meals, the dreams I put on hold, dismissed like lint on her sweater. After dinner, I slipped outside. The snow was falling softly, blanketing the world in silence. My grandmother followed, her shawl pulled tight around her frail shoulders. "She's always been like that," Grandma whispered, pressing something into my palm, her old silver locket. "Don't let her freeze you out. One day, you'll have your own kind of warmth." I opened it later in my car. Inside was a tiny note, yellowed with age. "Keep building, even when they tear you down." That night, I packed what was left of my things and drove back to the city. I cried until the highway blurred, then swore I'd never go back until I had something that couldn't be dismissed, something that no one could take from me. I didn't know it yet, but that promise would become my foundation. Every overtime shift, every rejection, every silent night alone, they all began there, under that falling snow, with her words burning like a quiet flame in my chest. Starting over wasn't cinematic. It was fluorescent lights, instant noodles, and a phone that never stopped ringing. I took a receptionist job at a small architecture firm in Chicago. Not glamorous, but it paid the rent and kept me breathing. Every night, I'd stay after hours, watching the designers at their desks sketch out blueprints that looked like dreams made of ink and imagination. One night, my boss, Mrs. Hensley, a woman with gray curls and the sharpest eyes I'd ever seen, caught me copying notes from an open textbook at the front desk. "You want to learn design?" she asked, arms crossed, half smiling. I froze, then nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I just can't afford school again." She studied me for a moment, then said, "Then learn here. After hours. But if you're going to do it like you mean it." That became my education. I learned everything: drafting, software, budgets, clients. I failed a dozen times before anything I drew made sense. Some nights I'd fall asleep at my desk, my cheek pressed against blueprints and cold coffee rings. But slowly, painfully, I got better. 2 years later, I pitched my first design for a local cafe renovation. The client loved it. When the final reveal came, they hugged me in tears, said I'd given them a place that felt like home. That moment, the warmth in their eyes, the gratitude, it stitched something inside me that my mother's words had torn. Mrs. Hensley promoted me, then quietly became my mentor. "You have an eye for places that heal," she told me once. "Maybe because you needed one yourself." I started my own firm 3 years later, Holloway Designs. I kept the name simple, modest. I didn't post much online, didn't tell my family. Mark sent the occasional text asking for money, Mom called when bills were due, but no one asked how I was. And I stopped offering details. I learned to move in silence. Success, I realized, didn't need an audience. Then came the moment that changed everything. The hospital called about Dad's final bills. $70,000. Unpaid. Mom's name on the account, but her credit maxed out. I didn't hesitate. I wired the full amount that night. No message. No receipt. Just a quiet closing of a long, painful chapter. I told myself I was doing it for him, not them. But deep down, I think I wanted to prove something, that even after everything, I could still rise without their approval. A month later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. My mother's cursive, neat as ever. "We appreciate your help, but we've decided it's best you not come around for Christmas. It just makes things uncomfortable." I remember reading that line in silence. Then I laughed, not bitterly, just softly, like the sound of something breaking free. They could keep their Christmas. I had my peace, and soon, I'd have something far brighter than their acceptance. It was 2 weeks before Christmas when I saw my brother's name flash on my phone. I hadn't heard from Mark in months, not since Mom's letter. "Hey, he said, his tone too bright. "Listen, we're all meeting at Mom's this weekend. She'd like you to come by." I almost laughed. She'd like me to come by? After everything? Still, curiosity tugged at me. "Sure," I said, voice even. "I'll be there." When I pulled into the driveway that Saturday, their house looked smaller than I remembered. Tired siding, chipped paint, the faint hum of Christmas lights struggling to stay lit. I stood there for a moment, remembering every time I'd walked up those steps hoping for warmth, only to find cold judgment waiting behind the door. Mom answered, smiling tightly. "Emily, you look different." "I should," I said lightly. "It's been years." The living room was the same worn couch, same family photos, except mine was missing from the mantel. A neat gap where I used to belong. Mark cleared his throat. "So, we were talking about Dad's medical bills." "I already paid them," I said, settling into the armchair. "Months ago." Mom blinked. "You what?" $70,000, I said calmly. "I wired it to the hospital. You should have received confirmation." Silence filled the room. The ticking wall clock suddenly seemed deafening. "I assumed you knew," I added, glancing at her. "Since you sent me that kind letter after." Her face went pale. "Emily, that wasn't meant." "I know what it meant." Mark rubbed the back of his neck. "Wait. You had 70 grand just lying around?" I smiled faintly. "Not lying around. Earned. Worked for. Built. I own Holloway Designs. We do high-end restorations now, commercial, residential, full remodels. The firm's valued at about $6 million. The silence deepened. Mom's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She looked at me like she was trying to see the version of me she dismissed all those years ago, the girl she'd told wasn't useful. But that girl didn't exist anymore. I looked around the room. The lights flickered again, dim and unsteady. "Funny," I said softly, "I'm still paying the utility bill here. Automatic draft since 2018. Guess I just forgot to cancel." Her eyes widened. "You've been—" "Yeah," I interrupted. "Keeping your lights on, even when you decided I didn't belong under them." No one spoke. Mark looked away, shame clouding his face. I stood, smoothing the crease in my coat. I didn't come here to fight. I came to close a chapter. I walked to the wall, found the switch that led to the breaker box, and paused. This house, these lights, They've been mine to sustain for years. But I think it's time you learn what the dark feels like. And with one steady motion, I flipped the breaker. The room plunged into silence and shadow. Only the glow from the streetlights outside slipped through the blinds. Mom whispered, "Emily, please." I turned back to her, calm, not cruel. "I'm not cutting you off, Mom. I'm just reminding you. Power has always come from me. You just never wanted to see it." I stepped toward the door, my heels clicking softly on the tile. "Merry Christmas," I said, voice low but sure. "Next year. Maybe earn the light back." Outside, the cold air felt cleaner than it ever had. My car keys jingled in my hand like freedom. I didn't look back, because for the first time I didn't have to. 3 days later, Mark showed up at my office. He looked uncomfortable, standing in the polished marble lobby of Holloway Designs, surrounded by art and quiet sophistication he clearly didn't expect. "Wow," he muttered, glancing around. "You really built all this." I nodded, offering a polite smile. "Coffee?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Look, Mom's been a mess since you left. The power's still off. She won't let anyone fix it. Says it's her punishment or something." I leaned back in my chair. Punishment implies regret. Does she have that? He sighed. "She won't say it, but yeah, she's embarrassed. We all are." I watched him carefully. He wasn't lying, but he wasn't ready to take responsibility either. "Embarrassment isn't change, Mark. It's just discomfort." He looked down, fidgeting. "She asked if you'd help. Maybe just pay to get it turned back on." A quiet laugh escaped me, not mocking, just tired. I spent years doing everything right, working, sending money, trying to prove I was good enough. And the one time I stand up for myself, now I'm the villain. He didn't respond. I stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered under a soft winter sun. "I'll help," I said finally, "but there are conditions." He looked up quickly. "Conditions?" "Yes. If Mom wants my help, she needs to start therapy, real therapy, not church gossip disguised as prayer. She needs to face why she used control as love." Mark's brows furrowed. "And me?" "You," I said, turning to face him, "need to stop being her messenger. You're a grown man. Start your own life, your own family traditions. Stop letting her dictate your conscience." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. "And one more thing," I added softly. "When the lights come back on, tell her it's temporary. I'm not her power source anymore, literally or emotionally. If she wants warmth, she has to earn it." Mark nodded slowly. "You really changed, Em." "No," I said, walking back to my desk. "I just stopped apologizing for growing." He gave me a small, almost broken smile before leaving. When the door closed behind him, I sat there in the quiet hum of my success, the life I built from every no I ever heard. There was no triumph in it, no cruelty, just balance. For once, I wasn't chasing love or approval. I was setting terms for them and for myself. And as I watched the city lights flicker on that evening, I thought, maybe that's what power really is, not control but clarity. A month passed before I heard from Mom again. This time, it wasn't a text or a guilt-ridden call. It was a letter. The handwriting was shakier than before, like she'd wrestled with every word. "Emily, you were right. I don't know when I started confusing love with control. Maybe I thought if I could keep everyone close, I'd never lose them. But I lost you anyway. I've started therapy like you asked. It's harder than I thought. I hope someday you'll come home, not out of obligation, but because you want to. Love, Mom." I sat at my kitchen table, tracing her words with my thumb. The city was quiet beyond the glass walls, snow falling like forgiveness I wasn't sure I was ready to accept. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired and maybe a little sad. But it was a different kind of sadness, one that didn't sting. It just existed, like an echo of what used to hurt. I opened the drawer beside me and pulled out the old silver locket Grandma's. The hinge creaked as I opened it, revealing the tiny note still tucked inside. "Keep building, even when they tear you down." I smiled through the tears that surprised me. That message had been my compass, my promise, my armor. And now it felt like a full circle. I had built, I had fallen, and I had risen again. That weekend, I drove out to the old house. The lights were on. Warm, steady, glowing through the snow. For a moment, I just stood there, watching from the curb, not needing to knock, not needing to enter. Just content knowing the power was hers now, not mine. I whispered softly, more to the wind than anyone else, "Merry Christmas, Mom." Then I turned back to my car, slipped the locket around my neck, and drove away, toward a future that finally belonged to me. Because maybe I wasn't welcome at their Christmas, but I had built a home where peace finally stayed.